As Hector has just mentioned, we have been working along the lines of housing in Argentina for a very long time, trying to find out what we call space injustice, spatial injustice, as we call it in Argentina. I will stem from a specific topic, the great paradox in Argentina today.
Namely that, fortunately, we are able to overcome a very important crisis, and we have been able to maintain economic growth for almost 10 years with a significant number of social indicators having improved. State management has also improved, so we are far better off as a country, but paradoxically, we are worse in terms of spatial justice, and more specifically in terms of rights of access to urban land. Let me show you now the soil market performance. Something key here is the historical changes that have taken place in the forms of access to land, how these increases the inequality in social spatial fields, and to what extent this process is affecting local governments and the administration and management of land, which is of the essence for this. And it is here where I would like to go over the action taken by state in terms of housing and planning, to end with the legislative proposals we are discussing at the Senate, more particularly one that I am interested in, that is a land planning law in Argentina. I mean, a bill actually, because Argentina has no national law on this matter, on land development. This paradox is what we see with markets on the one hand, and as you can see here, we emerged from the deep crisis back in 2001-2002 with an ongoing increase in GDP at what we call Chinese rates. The driver of this has been government investment. How did we come out of the crisis? Well, through public works and with the state driving the economy as a counter-cyclical effect. Government investment has been sustained, by the way. Concurrently with that, there has been a process where agricultural products have grown. You know, Argentina has a tradition in the field of agricultural technology, and it experienced a boom, the soybean boom, as we call it in general terms, but it is worth noting that other agricultural products have boomed as well. Notice the impact this has had on the value of agricultural land. The value of hectare in the rich area in the province of Buenos Aires was worth $2,200 per hectare, $2,200. Last year, the price paid was $17,000 per hectare. This is a true increase in land values in the market. There is a discussion in the province in Buenos Aires at present as to how this will be taxed, considering that the assessment is significantly lower. Also, we are witnessing a real estate boom with record construction rates in all cities, with increases in the price of urban land by 4 or 5 times in the city of Buenos Aires. Here you see other examples. The price has climbed from $500 to $1,500 per square meter in just a few years, and there is a detachment between these values and salaries. That one of the problems, and you see the increased gap between the cost per square meter and salaries. This is what economists are studying at present. The demand for land has a reason. I mean, the economic boom results in the demand of urban land for the conduct of different activities. Say, for example, logistics centers in the wealthy agricultural land, or shopping centers. That is, there is a large demand of land for the development of business activities, and at the same time there is significant demand for land for residential housing developments. This is a picture of the city of Rosario, for example. The purchase by real property by high income levels is taking place, but also there are people who are using the surplus generated by agricultural activities to buy real estate. Here in Buenos Aires, many of the buildings that you see being erected are vacant. If people have some surplus, they won't deposit that in the bank or won't buy securities or bonds, but will allocate it to construction. This is something that is driving this process, together with an expansion in service activities as well as an expansion in the travel industry. In the case of a city of 18,000 inhabitants in the wealthy area of Santa Fe, it has 18,000 inhabitants and 18 tower buildings, tower blocks, which are empty, by the way. This is the building rate in the wealthiest areas. You see that back in the 90s, 71% was for use of the middle class, whereas today they are luxury buildings aiming at the high-income class, which is accompanied by a high price of land. The concern is such that by year-end, real estate developers held a meeting concerned about the fact that the real estate business is reaching its cap. They discussed that the cost of construction has increased because of inflation, but what has grown the most is the incidence of land cost in real estate development. The concern being that the profit margin is far smaller with a far larger investment. On the other hand, we are working on this bill, and we may invite real estate developers to the discussion, because everyone is concerned about finding clearer rules for this market. I will now move on to the second part of my presentation. Concurrently with what I have described, there has been a far deeper process, what I called conditions of access to land by the population in general. And let me show you this. This is Mr. Forestieri, who was a tailor in Córdoba. If you bought a 49 peso suit, he would give you a plot of land as a gift. The land was worth nothing at that time because of some specificities. I mean, there were environmental features plus soil quality which caused land to cost nothing. This is how metropolitan areas developed, through public transport plus the awarding of free bricks. That was the case back in the 40s and 50s. It was very easy to access a plot of land to build your home. These were the typical auctions. This was a typical situation, the railway on the one hand and the buses on the other, and that's how cities grew and were arranged, with middle classes, with those small plots that could be accessed by buses and trains, to popular lots. That's how cities developed. In the popular sectors, there was a progressive construction. I mean, how the housing evolved back then in the 70s, 80s, and how to assist to these processes. That was what we studied in the past. Someone bought a small home, then built toilet, and then built using bricks. Why was that? Well, because this was facilitated by the access to land. So much so that between 1947 and 1980, the difference in the urban grid, that is that presented in the dark color and in yellow, implied 5 million inhabitants having access to land through ownership of their own plot. The sale of plots, usually remember Camar, Vinelli, those companies that would sell plots in 100 installments. There were people who went to visit those plots by bus. People would come down to Buenos Aires to live, they would get married, rent housing for a while, and then would buy their plot. And that's how the city transformed itself. That came to a halt at some point. There was an oversupply of plots. This is an example of Moreno, which is in the third region in the outskirts of Buenos Aires. There was a change in the use of land, as a result of which plots had to be sold with the provision of basic utilities, which was not the case in the past. In the past, no utilities were provided because, as a result of soil conditions, people would dig a hole and have drinking water. That was no longer the case, and yet another process started. The children of those people who had bought their small plots and built their homes, their children could no longer afford buying land. So there was also a situation in the dictatorship period. The slums were removed, and so commenced a process, that is, that popular sectors had access to land through the informal market. There were organized squattering processes in different areas, even encouraged by the church, like Bishop Novak. And it was back then in the late 80s, early 90s, when a new process started, whereby elites gained access to land. They would no longer live in the city, but would start developing a phenomenon which was unknown to us until then, what we call the gated communities, self-segregated urbanizations. This is an analysis conducted back in 2001. Highways were a key factor in the northern region of Buenos Aires to give access to land. Back then there were already 240 gated communities or country clubs, and later on there were 560. The number of plots was 115,000, and all gated communities took up the amount of square kilometers that you see below. The city takes up 200 kilometers, gated communities 400. That is twofold the amount of them. This installs another form of urbanization. That, to me, is not a city because it has no public thoroughfares, which should be a condition or a prerequisite for any city. Plus, these are the sales brochures advertising the location of the gated community vis-a-vis the highway. This is a highway system, and the colored areas are the ones with the largest gated community density. And they never pay for the surplus of utilities which are used for sales strategies. Notice that the color coincides with the colors taken from a map sent by INTA, which is the National Agricultural Technology Institute here in Argentina, which is concerned because the price of land in those areas is precisely affecting agricultural land. Gated communities are therefore competing with and expelling small farmers who in the end produce what we consume in the city every day. You see here the gated community and the small farmer working next to it. This is research work performed by a French researcher who analyzed how this process is affecting land value, plus significant